Hello, everybody. I miss you guys. As you know, we were going to go into argument as our last unit of the year, but because we are in a unique situation, Miss Hamner, Miss Cobb, and Miss Adcox and we all talked to say we are really in a cool position to do some work that might be historically significant for others. And so we want to talk to you about that and work through that a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about primary sources, which you have heard of before in history and science and English and things like that. You have read primary sources and you've experienced them in different ways. So primary sources are just anything published in some way, shape, or form during a specific time that people might study. So if you've read the Diary of Anne Frank, you know that was written during the Holocaust, and it is a primary text source because it was Anne's diaries. And Miss Hamner's mini lessons will focus on that as a mentor text. Remember when we were working on our journalism unit and we looked at interviews from StoryCorps? If you go through some of the StoryCorps sites, that you might see some different things like from 9/11 or from the Great Depression, and those would be considered primary sources because they're interviews with people that have experienced that. So right now you are in a very particular time in history. You are in the COVID-19 pandemic. Our governor and many other states have issued some different ways to try to keep people safe, including the stay-at-home or shelter-in-place type of work. So a lot of your parents or family members are at home doing what they need to do. Some of your parents or family members are considered essential employees, especially if they're doctors and nurses and people who can get food and safety out to others. And so they may be working. And with all of these things, we are all having different experiences with this pandemic, which brought us to think about us making sure to write down our experiences and our stories, our thoughts and our feelings from this time so that in the future, you may indeed be drawn on as a primary source, something you wrote, whether it's a diary entry or a poem or a story about your days or something you recorded. You recorded yourself talking about your thoughts or feelings or the people in your house or doing interviews. Those can all be looked at by somebody who might be researching this time in history. And so I think that it will be interesting to do that work. So thinking of that, I'm at school today, and you'll see my school stuff behind me. Most of my videos will be on at my house, at my desk with dogs and everything else in the background. But today I'm here because I wanted to make sure that we had some access to some historical primary sources. And because Ms. Hamner is doing Diary of Anne Frank, I came to make sure that we had some other sources to use so that you can have kind of that general feel of both for that. And you're welcome to look at Ms. Hamner's mini lessons too and use ours together in tandem. So attached to our files on Google Classroom or to your paper handouts that you might have, we have an excerpt from Persepolis, which is a graphic novel detailing her time in Tehran, where they had to dress and think specific things. So we have that. We also have Turning 15, an excerpt from Turning 15 on the Road to Freedom. And this is basically an interview. So this is the lady who was in the situation, and she told her story to these people who then took it into book form. What's cool about this particular one is that not only are there awesome illustrations and things like that, but they do have actual pictures from that time period, so that if you were researching that time period, not only would you get her personal story, but you would get some of the actual images, those primary sources, photographs from that period. Another one we have that I've actually found very interesting for some of my own writing that I will show in some future videos is I Remember Beirut. And this is also a graphic novel. And it's told just in these kind of black and white stark images. And so I have that as well. Because I want you to see that not only can you write a story like we've written before, you've written personal narratives in 6th grade and might have dabbled in a little bit of historical fiction in 7th grade, but you have a little bit of experience with that. But there's other ways to document your time during this pandemic in ways that make sense for you. Today, however, we are going to look at a primary source, and we want to do the things that we've been doing previously when we have a mentor text. So remember, when we have a mentor text, we might use that to help us figure out the ways in which we can write about things. Today, I'm going to share an excerpt from a story, Small Steps, The Year I Got Polio, and it's by one of your guys' favorite authors. She is the one who has written Escape and Abandon. Wait, there might be a list. All of those like mysteries that have kind of gone around, Abduction, Earthquake Terror, those kinds of things. Ghost Grave, that's been checked out a lot. So I know that that's an author that you all like, and it will be interesting to see and read about her time with polio, which is a specific period of time, and how she writes about that so that we can take her lessons and write that same way about ours. So let's just read a little bit from Small Steps. I've got it printed out because I will want to remind you how we might annotate. So we'll just read a little bit of that first chapter. Remember, when we work with mentor text, you want to read it through first and just kind of be thinking about what grabs you, what stands out to you, and then you'll go back to do that work of annotating or taking notes a little bit, depending on what you want to focus on. So here we go. Chapter 1, The Diagnosis. My ordeal began on a Friday early in September. In school that morning, I glanced at the clock often, eager for the homecoming parade at 4 o'clock. As a 7th grader, it was my first chance to take part in the homecoming fun. For a week, my friends and I had spent every spare moment working on the 7th grade float, and we were sure it was going to win first prize. My class before lunch was chorus. I loved to sing, and we were practicing a song whose lyrics are the inscription on the Statue of Liberty. Usually the words, "Give me your tired, your poor," brought goosebumps to my arms. But on homecoming day, I was distracted by a twitching muscle in my left thigh. As I sang, a section of my blue skirt popped up and down as if jumping beans lived in my leg. I pressed my hand against my thigh, trying to make the muscle be still, but it leaped and jerked beneath my fingers. I stretched my leg forward and rotated the ankle. Twitch, twitch. Next, I tightened my leg muscles for a few seconds and then relaxed them. Nothing helped. The bell rang. When I started toward my locker, my legs buckled as if I had nothing but cotton inside my skin. I collapsed, scattering my books onto the floor. Someone yelled, "Peg fainted!" But I knew I had not fainted because my eyes stayed open and I was conscious. I sat on the floor for a moment while my classmates collected my books. So let's stop there for just a second and think about how the author has written. This is a time you might want to use your narrative techniques, your goals and techniques chart, if you're not sure how to go through to name those different things. So you might have that out beside you as you work. And if you don't have access to that, we do have it on Google Classroom and you can pull it up if you want. But most of you will kind of remember what we've talked about. So remember, when we annotate, we read through our text and then we think, what did the writer do to make this work? I know there was a very specific spot where I was like, ooh, what's going on here? So we want to look at that spot again. Then we want to name that technique or strategy. And later we can try that out in our own writing. Okay? So if we come back down to about here, let me get a highlighter so you can see that better. This is what kind of drew me right here. Usually, the words, "Give me your tired, your poor," brought goosebumps to my arms. But on homecoming day, I was distracted by a twitching muscle in my left thigh. So here the author is telling us something that, happens at first, but something else is going on, which clues us that what's getting ready to happen might be, pretty significant. And then what I really liked about this particular line was that she uses some figurative language. As I sang, a section of my blue skirt popped up and down as if jumping beans lived in my leg. So we've kind of got this small moment. She's in chorus and she's singing, and usually that's a great thing for her, but today something else is going on. Her blue skirt popped up and down as if jumping beans lived in her leg. So if I'm annotating, I might think, oh, figurative language. This is really painting a picture in my head. I might go ahead and name it. We know that that's a simile, as if jumping beans are in my head. We've got some interesting verb going on here, that my blue skirt popped up and down. So not just my leg moved, right? The author is using those vivid verbs to bring that to life. So as you go through, you want to think about how you can incorporate some of that work in your own writing. The other thing that you'll notice as you finish the whole chapter, which we won't read all together right in this video, is that up until the very end, it's all just one day and one night. So it isn't like a giant section of time. It's not the entire time she had polio. This is just one small moment when she was first experiencing symptoms and then when she got the diagnosis. So it takes place over just one day and night. So that's going to be important to think about too. So today, as you work, going through and continuing to annotate and seeing how other authors write, you want to think in your head about moments that are happening during this pandemic to you guys. And when you start to decide on some ideas that you might write about, you want to focus on that one moment. Like, you're not going to write right now about the whole entire 2 weeks necessarily, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or however it goes. You want to think about what's just one moment that I have a story to tell. What might be something that is specific? And then remember that writers use techniques to help us figure out how to bring that moment to life for our readers. Okay? So today's work falls under that thinking. Finish annotating either this piece, the small steps piece, or another piece in your packets or online. Any of those pieces are fine to use. Read first and then say, how did the writer make this work? And make those notes on your text. Then think about some of those ways that you wrote at the beginning of the year, and what might be some goals for this particular writing that will help you move forward. Do you want to try to write every day? Do you want to try to make sure that you're capturing small moments? Do you want to try to make sure that you're including those vivid details? You might even use a narrative checklist to help you figure out what might be best. Then try to begin a draft today. Think about, what is one moment that we could talk about? Maybe you had a fight with your brother. Maybe you went with your mom to the store and there wasn't any toilet paper. What are some of those moments that you might be able to bring to life on the page? Now, I don't want you to spend lots and lots of hours and hours on this. Limit yourself to about 30 minutes of work. If it goes over that, I'm not going to complain. But after about 30 minutes, move on to another subject or another thing that you are interested in. Please don't take longer than that, because I do want you to be able to relax and enjoy some of that time. Remember, we do have week 4 vocabulary for this week, so you might want to look at that too. If you have any questions, remember we will have a Google Meets live session on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 10:30 each morning. So set your alarm and come talk with me.